You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hey, mamas, and welcome back to another awesome episode of the Mama Work It podcast. Today we are talking about money, honey. I am super excited to be chatting with Katy Almstrom. Katy is a financial coach, teacher, and speaker who works with driven women who are ready to pay off their debt and create a sustainable future that includes simple strategies so they can reach their goals and live out their dreams. Yes, please. With over a decade of experience in teaching and coaching combined in her own debt-free journey and simplified life, Katy provides a unique service for her clients to help them slow down, map out their own joyful debt-free journey, and create a life that has way less stress around money. I know so many moms listening right now may feel stuck in their current careers or just in their current financial situation because of money struggles. And I think this is going to be a really great episode to help them make that journey to financial freedom, one that is totally doable and totally possible. Katy, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Marissa. I am really excited for this.
Good. Me too. All right. Well, first things first, can you tell us just a little bit more about you and how you got started as a financial coach?
Yes, absolutely. So it's actually really funny. I was a high school Latin teacher for almost 15 years. I coached athletics. I was a soccer, softball, volleyball, basketball, strength training, a lot of coaching, college advising, academic advising, dorm parent. So like this whole other world, right? And when I decided to leave teaching, I started telling people I was going to be a financial coach, help people with their money. And there was such a disconnect. People are like, wait, you're a Latin teacher. Like, we know you as a Latin teacher. What are you doing? You know, they couldn't see sort of what the jump was or how I was making this shift. But the reality is, when I was about 25, so a while ago, I paid off almost $40,000 in debt. And that period in my life, it took me about 2 years, and I worked really hard at it. I was very focused. That period in my life was so transformational. And I don't know about you or your listeners, but something about my mid-20s, I just wasn't doing a whole lot that well. It was a hard period financially. It was a hard period with relationships. It was a hard period just with work, trying to figure out who was I, what did I want to do. I wasn't eating well. I was drinking too much. I'm a former college athlete. I didn't have that structure anymore. And money was the first thing that I sort of got right. And that was just a catalyst for so many other things in my life that started falling into place. And so I grew up with an entrepreneurial father. I always sort of knew that I would have a business someday. I just thought someday is always someday until finally it's like, oh my gosh, I'm running out of time. I need to do it now if I'm ever going to do it, kind of thing. And it was so serendipitous. I was, a mom of 2 really young kids, and I just did not want to do what I was doing anymore. And helping people with their money was something that had been planted as a seed, over a decade earlier. And so it was a very easy shift for me to want to help people with their money, to sort of go through that kind of a transformation that I went through. But of course, that was my story. It was sort of my secret for a long time that I had found this, amazing way to change how I felt about money, how I operated with money. And now it's all I talk about. But it was very much sort of this surprise for people. Like, wait, what do you know about money? And so that was the reason I was able to do what I decided to do, able to make that change. But that shift was definitely an interesting transition for my friends and family to sort of see me go from this one identity to a totally new thing.
Yeah, like not even a math teacher.
No, not even. I know, totally.
That's awesome, though. That's awesome. I love it. I love it. I think a lot of times when we hear the word budget, we automatically think restrictive. I don't know about you, but I tend to feel that way, right? You choose to talk about money more as a journey. And is this because, in your opinion, it isn't a restrictive budget that gets you debt free?
So more to the story. Like it's really funny because I even listened to the intro, which I sent you months ago, and I am almost like, gosh, I'm still evolving. Like the messaging and sort of what I want women to know, it's always getting more clear to me, and it's always changing. And essentially, yes, you hit the nail on the head. It's a journey, and kind of following one specific plan is never a good idea. If 2020 and 2021, for that matter, have taught us anything, we have to be adaptable, we have to be flexible, and we have absolutely got to get our priorities straight. So I think a lot of people, they grasp onto a message or what they think they should be doing, and they lose sight of what actually makes the most sense for them personally, for their families, for their relationships, their kids. And so, they might be trying to pay off debt at lightning speed, but they're completely missing this opportunity to grow in their marriage. They're missing an opportunity to improve their health. They're missing an opportunity to save up enough money to be able to leave a job and have more time at home. So there's just this, I think, in the online space, too much of this is the way to do it. And granted, it is getting better. I will say, I think there's a lot more people out there saying like, wait, like what's actually best for you? And let's figure that out together and do that. But I subscribed to a very specific plan when I was getting out of debt that's very popular. And it worked for me because I was young, I was single, I had no responsibilities other than myself. And I could just work really hard and make extra money and throw everything at debt. I had that luxury at that time, even though I was just making a teacher's salary. And when I started coaching, I thought that was a good plan because it worked for me. I had that evidence. But very quickly, I realized that that's not the case for everybody. And so I really changed my tune. And with the help of my clients, learned what actually works best for people. And so this word budget, right? People have different associations with different words. Literally, the definition of a budget is a plan for your money. The adjective budget means low cost. And so a lot of people do have that, like when something is budget friendly, that means it doesn't cost a lot. But we have no idea what your budget is. We have no idea what your plan is. We have no idea how much money there is. And so it's just, these words get kind of misconstrued. I think it's important to have a plan, and I think it's important to know what's most important to you. And I think it's important to have your family on board and really working together. And those are really the three keys. It's like, what's actually most important to us? And what can we actually look at and either try to follow or at least have something to fall back on? And how are we making it easy where we can all sort of support each other and encourage each other because it's in alignment with what matters to us?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the key to any management, your time, your money, your schedule, gosh, all of it is your priorities. So that makes total sense to me. Like, you're speaking my language, Katy. I get it.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And I like that you said that. I think that when you said that about the word budget, it reminded me of also the word diet. A lot of people have a negative perception of the word diet because they think, oh, that means I can't eat the things that I love. It's this temporary kind of starvation period or whatever. Meanwhile, the word diet just means what you eat, right? Just like the word budget is a plan for your money, like you said. So maybe it's just our own connotation, our own perception that's gotten a bit morphed, and we need to kind of flip the script on that terminology a little bit.
Totally. And, it's funny because I have a friend who's been in my community for a while now, and she's a really good copywriter, has an amazing copywriting business. And she just said to me one day, like, Katy, do you realize that when you tell people that they need to get out of debt by using a budget, that you're basically just saying you're fat, get on a diet? Like, that's what people hear. And I was like, oh my gosh,
no,
like this is early on. And so she's like, maybe we could come up with some other words. And I'm like, yeah, but maybe I could just make it easier for us to have this conversation too. I mean, I think that's a big part of it as well as, there's just not a lot of conversations about money. And ultimately, in the beginning, with a lot of women that I work with, yeah, that word budget is like, ew. And I'm like, okay, let's call it a plan, whatever. Like, it's your plan. And then once it starts working, once they start, and not just the plan, not just the budget, but this new relationship with, what do I want to intentionally do? What do I want my focus to be? What is one simple shift I can make, one goal I can work towards, and actually create the evidence that I can move forward with that. I love talking about building faith in ourselves, that we can move the needle no matter how slightly, and just create that identity. I'm a huge James Clear fan. He wrote the book Atomic Habits. And just this idea of having an identity of a person who stewards their money, a person who is intentional with money. It doesn't mean you can't decide this month, I'm not going to make a lot of progress. That's okay. Like, Christmas is coming, or there's something important that came up, but I am still, like, I still identify as someone who takes care of my money. I identify as someone who, checks in with a plan, even if the plan's gone to complete, shit, like, for lack of a better terms, we can still identify as the kind of person who focuses on it, is intentional about it, and then can make decisions based in that identity.
Yeah, I love that you said that. Yeah, you can be a healthy person, you can be an organized person, and you can have a day where you don't do those things, and that doesn't change who you are. It's just one day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Love it.
Or a month. I mean, a lot of times, with my clients, it's a month, because one thing, it feels like it unravels, but that's where being able to come back to that identity of, well, it's okay, because this isn't going to, the whole year is not going to be ruined. The whole plan does not have to fall apart, because I have these small habits. I have these tricks, that I've learned, that I've really established as a part of my routine. And, I was just talking to a client this morning about things happening by default versus being intentional. And so when the default kind of happens to us, especially with money, right? Unexpected bills come in, or we overspend somewhere, or we don't have a plan in the first place. And so we naturally just kind of cross our fingers, check our bank account, but it's always feeling like it's happening to us. When we end the month in that way and there's money left over, it doesn't feel like we did something well. It doesn't necessarily feel like we earned that savings, or it happened intentionally, because we're in that default mode, right? But when we are intentional and we actually make a plan for our money, and we actually get $50 in savings, we can use that outcome as real evidence that we know how to save money. Without any semblance of a plan, without any kind of intentionality, that default extra $50 doesn't feel like a good result. It feels like a fluke. And so we don't have that evidence then to say, okay, I'm the kind of person who can save. It's, oh my gosh, that's a fluke. Let's go spend it on something. Or, we almost don't know what to do with it. And so I really like to help women move into this direction of, I'm always being intentional. I'm building this identity that really feels good. It's not always going to be perfect. but we're moving in the right direction, and having any kind of plan to look at, to sort of gauge what's happening against, feels way more, I guess, like there's less fatigue, there's less decision fatigue, because we've already decided what the plan is. And then we just tweak or decide, whoops, we didn't plan as well, but we just have to tweak at this point. It's not completely reinventing some wheel month over month over month.
Right, right. And once you know it's working, you want to continue to do it. And you sometimes want to even like exceed your goals, right? Or be overly ambitious, be an overachiever, rather than just think to yourself, oh, I got lucky this month. Here's why. That'll never happen again. Let's just go with the flow, right? So
that is exactly what happened to me on my journey. I was super ambitious, super competitive, but the story I had was there's never enough left over. I'm always using my credit cards. And when I started to have a couple of wins back to back, because I was aiming, like I was trying to have a win, I had this faith that if I executed on this plan, something good would happen from it. And it did. And that just like shot me on a journey, because I saw that I could execute on something and it worked. And that immediately like shifted the mindset, the story I was telling myself. Before I had any kind of plan whatsoever, the only story I had was to get through the month, I use a credit card, or to fix my car, I use a credit card. Like this was before smartphones. I had the credit card company phone number stored, but I had my number, like you had to punch the number in. I mean, it was just all like the auto phone system to ask for more credit, to check my balance. You know, I couldn't just check it on the website.
That's draining.
And I just remember,
that's draining. Yeah.
Yes. And I just remember like constantly checking, you know, before I would have to go get my car repaired or just anything. I just not feeling like I had any control, and totally, just like completely listening to the story that I had to do something that didn't feel good to get through the month. And that just repeated itself. And that evidence just was building up beyond my control, really. Like it was just spinning wildly out of control. So,
yeah. That sounds like just such an anxious cycle to be in. So definitely not one you want to find yourself in, I'm sure. So let's talk about this journey a little bit. What does a sustainable debt-free journey actually mean?
So I believe that the key to a successful debt-free journey is first and foremost learning how to stop using debt. And I think a lot of people get really excited really quickly and want to just pay off their debt as quickly as possible. But that can backfire so much. And what happens is we're used to using debt, or we're used to spending everything that we have. And we've got to take the time to build a little bit of a buffer between us and life. So some extra money in the bank, a savings, just something. And get really comfortable with not using new debt. Now, this conversation isn't for someone who's like, no, I love my credit cards. I'm always going to have a car payment. I don't care about my student loans. Like, this isn't for that person. But for the women who like really don't want to have any more debt, they want to pay off their debt. That's awesome. It's a worthy goal. But it takes time, because being debt-free means you are debt-free day after day after day in your behavior. And so if we can really learn to operate without using debt, without feeling compelled to carry a credit card with us, without feeling like the credit card is our emergency fund, without feeling like, we're never going to make it without points and bonuses and all of that, fine, down the road, if you want to play that game, it's totally fine. But when you are creating that new evidence, when you are really trying to, I was going to say prove to yourself, but that's not the right word. Just create that identity that we're the kind of people who live debt-free. We have to actually start taking that action immediately. So paying off the actual debt is not the most important thing in the beginning. It is learning how to get through a month without using new debt. So we don't want to pay extra on a credit card, but then realize, oh my gosh, we have to put this tank of gas on the credit card. And in many ways, people think, well, it's no big deal. I made a $300 payment. It's only $50. Like, I still win. Not exactly. You're still relying on it. And so I would rather you not put anything on the credit card payment, right? I would rather you not pay anything on the credit card and get through the full month using the money that you have and saving some, because that is what sustainably over time is going to give you the resources and give you the really the ability to pay off all of your debt. So we have to live day after day after day, month after month after month, without using debt to become debt-free, to be debt-free. And ultimately, that is what my clients are most successful with, is when they believe that they can get through another month without using new debt.
Interesting. Okay. So to you, being debt-free, it doesn't even matter if you're using that card and then paying it in full every month. That's not being debt-free.
Well, so that's totally different. I think that's totally different than what we're talking about. So if someone has $20,000 in credit card debt and they're really stressed about it, a lot of times what they'll do is try to make big payments on it.
Gotcha.
But while they're doing that, they still wind up using the card.
I see.
And so for the woman who says, I hate my credit cards, I don't ever want to have to use one ever again, the strategy is, let's learn how to not use the credit card and not worry so much about paying off the balance quickly. For someone who doesn't care about having a credit card and they use it and pay it off, like that's a completely different person that I'm talking to here.
Okay. I gotcha. Okay.
Sustainability is really, how do we make this work long term? Because and some women have $10,000 that they want to pay off. Others have over $100,000 they want to pay off. And so the sustainability piece really depends on, well, how long is this going to take us? And what is it that you actually want? And if it's a 5-year journey, well, what's important in those 5 years and that we make sure we're making time and saving resources for? Because if you think that you're supposed to just pay off your debt as quickly as possible, but you're not going to, do anything with your young kids for 3 years that matters to you, there's a disconnect there. You're going to burn out. You're going to resent what you're doing. And ultimately, you're probably just going to resort back to old behaviors or just feel badly about money and your ability to steward money. So I really just like to map out, okay, how can we do what's most important, whether that's working on our marriage, doing things with our children, improving our health, right? A lot of my clients say, should I fire my personal trainer? It's like, probably not. I mean, let's look, let's see. But that, you have a personal trainer for a reason. Like, let's talk about that. And instead of just say, like, what feels like it's expensive. So that's the sustainability piece, is like, let's really make sure that what's most important and what matters to us is staying in the plan, that we're actually learning the behaviors that matter to be debt-free long-term. And we'll work on paying off the debt when you're ready to. And for some people, they're ready to immediately, but for others, they get caught in this, this plan or this system of paying off debt that they think they're supposed to subscribe to, and it just doesn't work for them right away.
Yeah, it's got to be a lifestyle, like you said. So it's better to not go from 0 to 100 and try to, get that 10K down or 100K down right away, versus getting the solid behaviors, the solid patterns, the solid habits in place, so that over time, you probably end up paying that off even more quickly once you have those core values, those core mindset strategies in place.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what are some ways to achieve joy in the journey to being debt-free? Rather than feeling that sense of like budget restriction we talked about, how can you feel joy in that? Because I know that's a big part of your program.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, again, it's like the personal trainer example. If we're just cutting things out left and right that actually make our day-to-day the most joyful, or the things that are really making us, it's how do we want to show up in our lives? And so if we are cutting out something that, and this example just always comes to mind. This client came to me literally with this example. She said, I think I should fire my trainer. And she just gone through losing both of her parents, young woman, and she went to the gym and worked with a trainer, and that really cleared her head. I mean, it was everything to her right then and there. And we looked at the cost of the trainer. It wasn't terribly much. And we looked at how much she was spending at Home Goods and, drive through. And it was triple what she was spending on the trainer. And I was like, listen, we could just cut what you're spending like in the box stores by a third. And that's your trainer right there. And it hadn't even occurred to her that that was like something to look at. She immediately went to what culturally feels extravagant. And I just think that we have to stop looking at certain things as, an extravagance. I mean, your therapist is not a luxury. And we have got to just make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. I've got, a lot of clients who really wanted to go into marriage counseling, and they were putting it off because of the money. And it's parents who want to do certain kinds of testing or therapies for their children, putting it off because of the money, because they feel like they have to pay off debt. And so those aren't joyful topics per se, but that brings joy back into a family when we are really doing what we say is important to us and aligning how we spend money with what matters. So if you find that you are getting takeout because there's no real plan for dinners in your house, or you're spending a lot of time in the big box stores because it's just a habit to stop there on the way home, like those are some things that we can look at and talk about and change as far as behavior goes, because those are not bringing the joy necessarily to the family. Those are not the things where if I look at your bank account and say, oh, yep, Target, TJ Maxx, Home Goods, like clearly this is the most important. Like most women would be like, no, those are all mistakes, right? Like, and we all do it, but we have to really just because that's normal for us to just, spend money and, the grocery store, all that stuff. Like what do you call it? Like people just joke about that. It's like the mom culture of just, I don't know, just like Target and like all the, we love those box stores and stuff.
Oh yeah. You can't get out of there without spending like $100 easy. Yeah.
And you see all these memes, like $9 plus $4 at Target equals $187 or whatever. But, just like that culture, like that's so accepted. Right. But if someone says like, oh yeah, I see my personal trainer, or I, have a therapist, sometimes people are like, ooh, like what's that set you back? It's like, come on, like this is the stuff that actually matters and makes us healthy. And so I don't know. I wasn't planning on like even bringing that up, but it's just something that I keep seeing. And it's just frustrating that we can feel like we should be paying off this debt at like lightning speed. And in the meantime, it's also okay to spend money where it doesn't really matter and complain with our friends about it. And someone who wants to actually take care of themselves and feel good, like that's a luxury. And so I just want us to all sort of like reset and say like, what is actually going to make me feel good? And what do I need? What does my family need? And how can we make that a part of our plan? That was very disjointed. I hope that maybe you can nicely package that all back up for us.
No, I love that you said this. I think
there's a bit of a riff there.
Yeah, I think there's something so crucial in having that clarity, right? Of like really knowing what fills you up internally, what really you need in that moment or in this season you're in. Maybe it is the marriage counseling. Maybe it is the therapy. Maybe it's working with a coach to figure that out. Maybe it's starting your business or passion project and working with a professional in that way too. It can feel really lonely and you can feel really lost when you're on that kind of journey if you're doing it alone. And investing in some professional help, whether that be a financial coach, a business coach, a life coach, anybody out there who can support you, a therapist, that can propel you 100 miles per hour faster than you being on this hamster wheel of trying to spend potentially years figuring that out yourself. And, we think about, oh, the cost, well, this is thousands of dollars. My trip to Target's, $87 or whatever. How many of those trips are you taking, girl? Right? Like that adds up. So it's not fulfilling you really at the core level. It's probably more than you think when you calculate that maybe over the course of a year. And, let's just stop this culture, this like sticker shock of other things, that maybe aren't the norm, that most people aren't talking about, the taboo topics or the thing that, people maybe are even doing secretly, right? Marriage counseling or therapy or anything like that, because it is going to bring you back. Like it's an investment that's going to bring you back so much more. I think that's what I got out of what you were saying. And I wanted to share that.
But yeah, I do think, so many of us too, and this is something else I just had a conversation about today, when we feel discontented, when we feel stuck, we are way more likely to, and I think Brooke Castillo, the life coach school, uses this term buffering, right? Where we are way more likely to go spend money, right? Mm-hmm. Go distract ourselves, do something that feels good. And, again, enter the rat race, the cycle where we feel stressed about money. What feels good? Go get a Starbucks and stop at Target. Those are like two of my favorite things to do. So no shame in that game. But I think because they're my favorite things, they're probably a lot of people's favorite things. And we can relate to that, right? But when it is, again, like that default versus the intentional, then we are automatically going to resort to feelings of shame, guilt. Ugh, I did that again, right? Instead of, this is part of my plan. I love to go to Target. I love to go to Starbucks. So, fund money in the budget for those things, or coffee money, or, house decor, like put it in the plan. And then when you go, it's already worked in the plan. Like it's part of the month. It's part of what we're intentionally spending on. And so then there's no room for the guilt or shame. It's sweet. Like this was set aside for this. And now it can be intentional and exciting. And now we're building up that evidence that, I can do the things that I enjoy with money and feel good about it, not bad about it. And we're still making progress, because another part of the plan this month is not to use debt when we are intentionally trying to pay off debt, or saving a little bit of money, or we're also, putting resources towards this thing that's important to our family that's really going to lift us all up. So yeah, that's how I think of a budget, with quotation marks, is the plan that works for you and your family. And that's not to say that sometimes we have to temporarily make some changes to our day-to-day because we're not moving in the right direction, but it's all temporary. And just a little bit of shift for a short period of time can make a huge impact. And that sort of discontent moving towards more contentment actually lessens our spending. Simplifying and just having a plan and having something that's working makes it so much easier to not spend as much money. And that's I've seen that, and anecdotally with clients, I see that where we're just less likely to buffer, right, with money when we feel confident with what we're doing and happy with where we are. And the whole, decluttering and simplifying conversation is a whole nother one that I'm sure you've had, but it's so closely related to money and how we spend money too.
It is. Yeah. I think they're all intertwined. Time management, household management, financial management. I consider myself a semi-minimalist on the home front. And I think, that type of lifestyle works for me, so. Well, I want to ask one final question before we move on to our lightning round. And that is, what are like the best habits and actions for moms listening to take to get started right now? Like right after this episode, what's one or two things they can do?
Oh man, I would say probably the best thing to do is find some way to create a plan as a household. So if you're married, you and your spouse, if you're single, do it on your own, but have somewhere where the plan for the month with your money lives. I love apps. There's a lot out there. Mint, YNAB, you need a budget, every dollar, something that works for you where you can easily see it, and just make the commitment to actually map out what are we going to do with our dollars in the coming month, right? Let's plan the new month that's on its way. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you don't have any savings, open up a savings account and just start auto saving, even if it's just $20 every couple of weeks. Do something. Those really are the two, if you're starting from scratch, those are the two best things that you can start with.
Love it. Yeah. Super simple, easy stuff.
Super simple.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we are going to head into the lightning round now. These are just random, just for fun questions. Nothing to do with financial management here. We just want to get to know you on a more personal level. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. What is your guilty pleasure TV show?
Right now, it is Episodes with Matt LeBlanc.
Haven't seen that yet.
It's really good.
What book are you reading right now?
I am reading Power versus Force.
All right, cool. That's
by Dr. David Hawkins.
Nice. Would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
Extroverted introvert.
What's one app you cannot live without?
Podcasts, Google Podcasts.
If you could go on vacation tomorrow, anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
My summer home, you're going to make me cry. My summer home in Canada, because I haven't been there in 3 years.
Oh, yeah, I bet. That sounds lovely. What is one thing you never leave the house without?
Probably my phone.
I know. It's me.
And coffee. My phone and coffee.
All right. And what's your go-to, get shit done song?
Taylor Swift. Just on Alexa.
Anything Taylor Swift.
Anything Taylor Swift. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
And that's new. That's new for me. I just have to I grew up with Taylor Swift, but in the last probably year and a half, she kind of resurfaced for me. So that's a new thing for me.
She's a good one. I like it. All right. Well, before we head out, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes. Best place to find me is in my Facebook group, The Simplified Budget. And I also have my own podcast that will be probably just launched when this is published. This podcast episode is published. And that is also The Simplified Budget, where I am coaching one woman over 3 months. And the episodes are our coaching sessions together. So you get to follow her journey.
Ooh, that's so interesting. I love it.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. So The Simplified Budget everywhere. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Katy. I learned a lot. I'm sure our listeners learned a lot, and I so appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.